Viewer, it's so good to have you back on this brand new episode of Battle Cry. As you know, we've had to take a little bit of a hiatus of a few months because of the COVID-19 pandemic, because here on India Today, we've been focusing all our energy in bringing coverage of the pandemic to you, the viewer, wherever you are in the country. But now with the national security situation in the country taking a twist and a turn in Ladakh, we've decided to bring Battle Cry back. Thank you so much for all your messages. We are back and this is the first episode. I don't need to tell you what's been happening in Ladakh. It's been over 2 months of a very, very tense standoff. And even though the first baby steps of a disengagement have now sort of tentatively begun, we cannot forget that there has been bloodshed during this standoff. And as the disengagement progresses and hopefully leads to a larger disengagement and pullback by Chinese forces, the Indian forces are not sleeping even a little. These are the defenders of Ladakh. India locked and loaded in Ladakh. After 2 months of tense standoff, baby steps to disengagement. But India isn't letting its guard down. Combat readiness is at maximum levels. From the men to the machines, from pilots to choppers and jets. The thundering defense of Ladakh, the top focus on Battle Cry. Now, in the high-altitude battlefields of eastern Ladakh, many of the enemy's movements might be happening at night. We saw that actually happen during the Galwan Valley bloodshed on June the 15th. But as the mobilization continues, in the hope that there will be a disengagement that follows now, India is working around the clock, deploying around the clock, and practicing for hostilities around the clock. One of the newest things seen in Ladakh are the Indian Air Force's brand new Apache attack helicopters. They began arriving last year. The last 5 of those 22 helicopters were actually delivered during the current standoff, and they're all now operationally ready, lethally armed, and in Ladakh. Manjeet Negi gets you up close after dark with the Indian Air Force's most formidable and feared helicopter. That's the sound of a country that doesn't sleep. When day turns to night, there's no downtime here in the combat zone. Because even as China takes the first baby steps to pull back from eastern Ladakh, the Indian Air Force has raised its operational preparedness levels in Ladakh to maximum. And what you're looking at is proof of the red alert. 24/7, non-stop, no compromise. Earlier, we showed you high-tempo Apache attack chopper operations by day. And now, the most feared rotorcraft in the world gets set to prowl in the darkness. Pilots strapped in, these formidable machines are fully equipped for the night hunt. And India Today gets exclusive and complete access.
2 days ago, we showed you the day operation of Indian Air Force near China border. Tonight, we will show you how Indian Air Force works 24/7 to protect our border.
The Apache's night eyes lie in this sensor on the Apache's chin, the pilot's night vision sensor. Along with the day-night target acquisition system, the feed from this sensor goes directly to the pilot through his helmet-mounted system. The Indian Apaches flying in Ladakh are flying with Hellfire precision-guided munitions, rockets, and a devastating 30mm chain gun. But the true brain of the Apache, especially at night, isn't visible in these dark images. Don't be fooled by how innocuous that structure looks as it sits above the Apache's rotor. That's the AN APG-78 Longbow fire control radar. That little sensor enables target detection while the Apache is behind obstacles like hills and mountains, allowing the helicopter to launch an attack before it is even seen.
The night operations have an inherent element of surprise. The Indian Air Force is fully trained and ready to undertake entire spectrum of operations in any environment with the help of modern platforms and motivated personnel. This airbase is well equipped and ready to undertake and support the operations on both fronts simultaneously.
जिस तरह के हालात अभी बॉर्डर पर बने हुए हैं, हमारा जोश जो है इस समय आसमान से भी ऊंचा है और भारतीय वायुसेना का हर एक वायुयोद्धा, हर एक वायुयान पूरी तरह सक्षम है और हम किसी भी परिस्थिति के लिए से निपटने के लिए एकदम तैयार हैं।
The lack of light is no hindrance to this beast of a chopper. In fact, it brings its own advantages. But the Ladakh darkness is seeing more than just the Apache flex its muscle on combat patrols. That's the unmistakable double chop of the Chinook. The iconic tandem rotor heavy lift helicopters that are pulling their weight even in the darkness. Chinook pilots in Ladakh are similarly making full use of the helicopter's night vision systems, giving them complete freedom to fly and operate in the combat zone.
Amid the tension with China, Air Force is carrying out whole night operation. Message is loud and clear. We are ready with 24/7.
And away from the war helicopters, Indian Air Force jets like MiG-29s and Su-30s are also keeping the tempo of combat flights uninterrupted. The clock never stops. War readiness is non-negotiable here in Ladakh. With Manjeet Negi in Ladakh, Bureau Report, India Today. But of course, those operations are not just happening at night. They must happen at night, but they're happening right through the day as well. India Today's Manjeet Negi got exclusive up-close access to air operations that are taking place. You'll see the familiar Mirage 2000. Remember the Balakot operations? Also, the Sukhoi 30 fighters, the MiG-29 fighters, and many others operating from Ladakh at this time. Combat air patrols being flown as well. Manjeet Negi gets you what it looks like for air operations to be in absolute top gear in Ladakh. It's been over 2 weeks since the bloody Galwan clash and 2 months since India's biggest recent military standoff began. Ladakh, since then, has witnessed a massive, unrelenting increase in deployments in forward areas. On Friday came Prime Minister Modi's strongest ever message to China from Leh Ladakh. And now, India's air power muscle on full unapologetic display. You're looking at frontline fighter jets in the combat zone. Making the nation's intent clear, India won't back down.
We have seen Air Force have deployed all its fighters, including Su-30, Mirage 2000, MiG-29, also helicopter like Chinook and Apache on forward bases. The preparedness suggested that Air Force is fully ready to go for any operation against the enemy.
India's fighter jets are in the skies over Ladakh on combat air patrols, prowling for trouble, sending out a clear message. Other aircraft are being used to carry equipment and troops into the area at short notice. This is an Indian Air Force MiG-29, a twin-engine fighter jet. Fast, super agile and armed with lethal air-to-air missiles, a terrible enemy to make in the air. The Sukhoi 30, an air dominance jet with a formidable ability to outflank the enemy. From transporting arms and ammunition to monitoring and surveillance, air operations near Ladakh's combat zone have never seen this kind of tempo.
चीन से लगने वाली भारत की सरहद पर भारत के हजारों सैनिक तैनात हैं, जिनके लिए वायुसेना अहम भूमिका निभाती है, खासतौर से फॉरवर्ड पोस्ट पर सैनिकों को पहुंचाने से लेकर उनके हथियार, राशन की अहम जिम्मेदारी होती है। और इसी तरह से चिनूक, अपाचे, चेतक, चीता जैसे हेलीकॉप्टर से मुश्किल हालात, खराब मौसम के बावजूद एयरफोर्स के एयर वॉरियर इन मिशन में लगातार लगे रहते हैं।
The Air Force's new AH-64E Apache attack helicopters, formidable for their eyes and weapons, capable of mounting stealthy attacks in the mountains from places where they can't even be seen. Originally from Punjab, they're loving the thin mountain air of their temporary operational home.
और इस वक्त अपाचे हेलीकॉप्टर चीन से लगने वाली सरहद पर तैनात है। यह हेलीकॉप्टर खासतौर से माउंटेन वॉरफेयर के लिए बेहतरीन माना जाता है और इस वक्त यहाँ मौजूदा हालात में चीन सरहद पर खासतौर से एयर मेंटेनेंस और वाइस यहाँ पर जो सेना तैनात है उनकी मदद के लिए यहाँ पर तैनात किया गया है।
Alongside the Apaches are these American Chinooks, heavy-lift helicopters with those iconic tandem rotors, now central to the Indian Air Force's air bridge, being used to rush men and materials at lightning speed, literally anywhere on the border. The Indian Air Force and the Army are in top gear.
Every air warrior at this base, and not only here, across the entire Indian Air Force, is fully trained and capable of meeting any challenges in front of them. Our Josh has always been high, and we will always touch the sky with glory.
Air power will play a very crucial role in this area, both in combat and combat support roles. We have all the resources in terms of men and machine to meet all the challenges.
With Manjeet Negi in Ladakh, Bureau Report, India Today. One of the most crucial weapons that's become operationally ready during this current standoff in Ladakh happens to be a largely Indian weapon, the Brahmos missile. And not just a land-launched missile, but the air-launched version, like you see here, launched from a Sukhoi 30 fighters. Now, these fighters may be deployed and based in the southern part of India, but they can be on station in theatre in Ladakh at very, very short notice. And these are missiles that are supersonic, have devastating accuracy, and can now be deployed if needed.
As the mountain of blood simmers, as a volatile situation sits on a hair trigger following treacherous bloodletting by Chinese troops, as India hunkers down to decide on how to respond. A major milestone in the country's combat capabilities. Amid simmering tensions with China at the border, a crucial Indian weapon system has been cleared for combat, and it's the one you're looking at, the Brahmos air-launched cruise missile. India today has learned that the Brahmos A, a 300-kilometer range supersonic cruise missile, has received what is called fleet release clearance, paving the way for the Indian Air Force squadrons to use the missile during combat missions if necessary. In other words, the Brahmos A is now fully operational and war-ready. The Sukhoi 30 MKI fighter aircraft was inducted at the Thanjavur IAF Air Base equipped with Brahmos supersonic cruise missile in January. And now, if the country's leadership chooses, these missiles can be wielded in battle. The missile cleared is the air-launched version of the Brahmos, seen here in action in its land-launched and ship-launched versions, a weapon that travels at blinding speed and devastating accuracy. As tensions brew on the border, as politics simmers of the betrayal and killing of unarmed Indian men, the country's war arsenal welcomes a new weapon. With Shivarur, Bureau Report, India Today.
So we've shown you some of the more prominent air power assets that have been deployed during the current tension in Ladakh. I quickly want to also take you through two other weapon systems which you likely won't see at all but are very much deployed there. We're not revealing anything sensitive. We're allowed to report this. The M777 ultralight howitzer, one of the newest weapon systems in the Indian Army, assembled in India, is also deployed in Ladakh. These are, well, you can call them the baby Bofors. They were the first artillery guns purchased since the Bofors guns. So in many ways, very, very important. They're light. They can be air transported, even by the Indian Air Force's Chinooks. So they are there and they are battle ready. The second important weapon system, which was procured quite a while ago and is a very, very interesting weapon system, is the Harop, which is a loitering suicide drone. So it's actually a kind of drone which flies autonomously, tracks its target, films it, and then actually dive bombs right into it. So it's a kind of loitering missile weapon system. This was supplied to India from Israel, and I can confirm that these are also on theatre and operationally ready to suppress air defenses on the Chinese side. Now I want to introduce you to my guests who are going to tell us more about what's happening. Abhishek Bhalla is our defense editor. He's been in Ladakh for the last 2 weeks. Gaurav Sawant, our senior executive editor, has just returned from Ladakh. Sandeep Unithan has been writing extensively on India's preparedness in China on the China border at this time. Abhishek, coming to you first, since you're on ground zero, you've been bringing us those fascinating pictures, Abhishek, of India's air power, the assets that are deployed there. Obviously, nothing secret. We're only showing what can be shown, not revealing any secrets. But isn't it true, Abhishek, that even while this disengagement progresses between both sides, India's operational readiness is at a very high tempo in Ladakh?
Whatever has been happening for the last 2 months now was quite unprecedented. There had been face-offs, there had been skirmishes at the line of actual control. Doklam happened, it continued for more than 70 days. But the kind of build-up that has happened this time across eastern Ladakh perhaps did not happen before. And not just now, but this readiness actually started 2 months back. Some very sensitive assets, be it the Air Force, be it the Army, were taken very close to the line of actual control. And as we speak, we've been reporting every day on the disengagement process that's been on, while the dialogue is continuing at the military as well as at the diplomatic level. But I can tell you, disengagement has happened in some places, but there's still no de-escalation, that's for sure. And if one is to go into the ground realities, I'm still hearing from various sources at different levels that even if the disengagement happens, the tension can continue for another few months, and this could well get into the winter, and it could be a harsh, tough winter for the Indian troops at the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh.
Absolutely. Gaurav, the Indian Air Force, the Indian Army have been deployed in Ladakh for a long time, even operationally. But what does it take to stay deployed in this manner at a very, very high operational tempo, where a lot of flights are happening, there's a great deal of mobilization? What does it actually take?
Shiv, because of the altitude, because of the temperature, because of the environment, wear and tear, both of man and material, much higher than in the planes. For example, your infantry combat vehicles and tanks, they need to be kept at a certain temperature if you want the tanks to operate when required. So some of the tanks in some areas are actually kept in an air-conditioned environment, better protected even than the men on ground. And not just on the Indian side, it's almost the same on the Chinese side. In fact, in their case, the altitudes are even higher in some places. They've also moved their men and material much longer than we have. Their supply chain much longer than ours. That's point one. Point two, when it comes to your air power, again, deploying that air power in those altitudes, taking off with heavier loads, much more difficult. The Leh airfield is 11,500 feet. Daulat Beg Oldie is 16,000 plus feet altitude. So when you take off at that altitude, you have to make that balance between more weapons or more fuel. So you take off with more weapons, you fuel mid-air, and then you're ready for combat. Indian Air Force and Indian Army much better geared up and prepared, because we've dealt with these altitudes for decades. Remember, we've been at the Siachen Glacier since 1984. It's the world's highest and costliest battlefield anyways, where a battle has been on between India and Pakistan since 1984. So that way, India's much better prepared. But will this be really for the long haul? And that's where, Shiv, it's India's comprehensive national power on display when we tell the Chinese that we no longer require their made-in-China stuff. That too sends out a big signal, Shiv.
Definitely sends out a very big signal, and we've just seen the Chinese ambassador put out perhaps his most conciliatory message so far during the standoff. But, Gaurav, you raise an important point, and I want to put that to Sandeep. Sandeep, this is a militarized area. Ladakh has seen a great deal of militarization, but what we've seen in the last 2 months is something that we haven't seen since perhaps after the Kargil war. This level of mobilization in this particular area, and especially in eastern Ladakh, perhaps for even longer. How long more do we need to stay deployed in this manner, Sandeep?
Well, Shiv, what we are seeing right now in Ladakh is signaling of a kind that we haven't seen since the Kargil war. You've just mentioned the kind of assets that we've deployed in theater, whether it's gunships or it's fighter jets, transport aircraft, they're all there in the theater. Now, the most important point that I see out of all this is that the India deployed all of these assets, the Air Force assets in theater the minute the Chinese intentions were known way back, almost 2 months back. So the Air Force was the first to move and get into the theater. Then the army came in. The important point here is that the signaling that we've seen here is that India has indicated that they are going to use the Air Force first if the need arises. And this also underscores the point that all the weapons that we've just spoken about, they're not only weapons of war, they are also weapons of conflict avoidance and deterrence.
Absolutely. That is a hugely important point, Sandeep, that this is not just about war. The true intention of these weapons, as we always say here on Battle Cry, the true strength of these weapons is if they never actually need to be used. Combat and hostilities avoidance is the entire point, the deterrence as well. Gaurav, stay safe. Abhishek, thank you for joining us from Leh. And Sandeep, we're going to continue this discussion because this is the long haul in Ladakh. Thanks, gentlemen, for being with me. And let's always remind ourselves that machines are nothing without the humans that actually use them. We've shown you the pilots. Now let's show you the soldiers who will soon be India's front line on the line of actual control with China in eastern Ladakh. The young cadets, the newest entrants into the Ladakh Scouts. These are sons of the soil, people with their homeland in their hearts, and they will be heading very soon to the border to defend their motherland and their Ladakh. These young Ladakhi boys in their teens might look gentle and harmless, but they're trained to be ferocious warriors. They're the next generation of the Ladakh Scouts, ready to take on the Chinese threat. These sons of the soil, popularly called snow warriors, are all set to be part of the Indian Army amidst the current India-China standoff in Ladakh. By September, they'll be inducted into the army and will be deployed in forward areas. Over the next 1 year, another 400 will be joining the Ladakh Scouts Infantry Regiment. At the regimental centre in Leh, the young recruits ready themselves for their future challenges that lie ahead. In a real-time battle scenario, they accomplish a task of taking over an enemy bunker on a hill, climbing the rugged mountains under the harsh, glaring sun.
This is exactly how things happen during a battle. The army always trains its young recruits for conventional warfare, and in wake of the current situation at the line of actual control, these kind of drills and training exercises are extremely important. This gives a clear idea of how treacherous this mountainous terrain is. It's extremely hostile, and that's what makes these young men very, very crucial because they are well acquainted with this terrain and they can fight in this hostile terrain because they are the sons of the soil. While firing has not been the norm at the line of actual control, that doesn't mean they don't prepare for the worst. With the army now altering the rules of engagement of not opening fire, these young men practice their firing skills as well. These young men are called sons of the soil and are well aware of the treacherous mountainous terrain of Ladakh. Polite but gentle, these are also ferocious warriors who can take on the enemy in high altitude areas, and as of now many of them are in forward areas at the line of actual control amid the ongoing tussle between the Indian and the Chinese armies.
They are tough soldiers, and along with their warrior skills, they also understand the terrain, and they are the eyes and the ears of the army as they truly understand the ground realities. In June, 127 youth had completed their training and joined the Ladakh Scouts. Officials say the number of those applying are much more than the regiment requires. The Ladakh Scouts played a stellar role during the Kargil conflict in 1999 as the troops understood the finer nuances of high mountain warfare. The current circumstances at the line of actual control are similar, where they may face Chinese aggression at heights of more than 14,000 feet. With Abhishek Bhalla in Leh, Ladakh. Bureau Report, India Today. Well, that's it on Battle Cry. We'll see you on a brand new episode next week. Thank you so much for watching and staying with us. I've enjoyed all your messages. And as I sign out, as always, remember, India's security will only be true when no human needs to be sent into war and no weapon fired.
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.